Welcome, Impactful Parents. Today we're going to talk about how to have a better sex life with children in the house. Hello, my name is Kristina Campos, and I'm founder of The Impactful Parent, and I help parents of school-age children who want to be one step ahead of their kids to turn their chaos into connection with their adolescent. I'm a mom of four, a teacher that's taught every grade from preschool through high school, and today I help moms and dads like yourself to navigate that exhausting, confusing, frustrating, but rewarding world of parenting. So welcome to The Impactful Parent. And today I have a special guest. Her name is Rebecca Udy. And Rebecca is a certified sex therapist, a licensed mental health counselor, and a couples therapist. And she specializes in helping couples navigate desire differences, emotional disconnection, and the complex realities of intimacy during those parenting years. So I'm excited to have her on the show today to talk about sex and how can we better connect with ourselves and our partners. So welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Oh my goodness, where to begin? Because this is a hot topic. I know there are so many parents out there who are just struggling because we all are. I mean, they're just like, we all are struggling. Something happens after children and everything just shifts. So your work focuses on desire differences. And for many couples, especially parents, there's a frustrating dynamic where one partner wants sex way more frequently than the other one. I know I'm not alone on this. Can you explain why this gap seems to widen when we have kids? And is there anything that we can do about it?
Yes. So it widens actually, certainly when we have kids, but anyone in a long-term relationship. These desire differences are more the norm than the exception. So it would be very rare to go through a long-term relationship with someone and not have a desire difference. Sometimes it fluctuates, people shift depending on, the stage of life they are and how much stress they have and everything. But for the most part, they're kind of stable. So you might have somebody who just naturally has a higher libido and another person who naturally has a lower libido. And it's not that either one of those in isolation would cause any issues. It's when you have the mismatch that it really causes a lot of problems. And absolutely, there's tons of things that we can do. The first thing, though, really is to recognize that this is normal and that it's not one person who's causing the problem over the other. It's actually the difference between the desires, which is nobody's fault, that's causing the issue.
Mm-hmm. So when sex drops off, or one partner is constantly doing the initiation and is turned down, resentment is going to build. So how do you coach couples to talk about their unmet needs and feelings of rejection in a way that is vulnerable, but still connecting, rather than accusatory and shutting down the other person?
Well, that's the $1 million question, because you're really putting your finger on a lot of what I do with couples. Beginning in that place where it's nobody's fault, that each person is struggling. And also, like you said, it's really important to recognize that being the person in the relationship who's holding all of the initiation energy around sex is, the person is being continually rejected. And that hurts, that stings. But on the other side, the person who's constantly saying no, sort of being the gatekeeper to the sex, it's been my experience that that person is usually holding initiation energy around something else. So for instance, that person may really feel like they're struggling with a lot of mental load. They may be often initiating emotional connection or emotional conversations and feeling unmet there. So it's very rare that this only, this doesn't just only affect one person. And so, this dynamic where one person feels like they're constantly being rejected and the other person feels like they can't live up, or that they're broken in some way, that they're not fulfilling their partner's needs, is just, it really can be very challenging. And that resentment buildup that you talked about, it's really huge. It's hard to work with, for sure.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think that there's so many parents out there who are dealing with this. Now, In your book, Parents in Love, you tackle complex realities of intimacy. So, what's the biggest mistake that parents make when they're trying to reignite their sex life?
Well, I think that the biggest mistake that parents make is recognizing that not recognizing that this is normal. It is normal to struggle with this. It's very rare that someone would not at some point in their relationship struggle with it. But the biggest mistake that people make is thinking that it's because it's normal, it's just something that is going to be there. We can't do anything about it. And that's the part that's not true. So, yes, it's normal. Yes, you're likely going to deal with this as parents in long-term relationships, but the fact that you wouldn't be able to do anything about it is not true. And so I think that that's the biggest mistake, is that people wait to get help. They blame each other. They start to they sort of let that resentment build, and then it becomes harder because we have to kind of wade through a lot of that resentment that's built up. So really, from my perspective, not addressing it sooner, not coming together to work to find a way to connect, even with the desire difference, that really is a big mistake that people make.
Now, I've had conversations with sex therapists in the past, and scheduling sex seems to be a popular suggestion, and it's a highly debated topic. Just to have parents schedule in the time to be intimate with each other. But for parents who are genuinely exhausted, raising my hand here too. I
Mhm.
mean, we all are as mothers, but the people who are really genuinely exhausted, this is a practical solution for them, or is it a passion killer? Because what are some of the creative ways that we can initiate low pressure ways to use a calendar to prioritize intimacy without making sex feel like another chore on the to-do list? And I think that's what ends up happening to so many couples who schedule it in. And at the same time, it's like, when else are we going to do it if we don't schedule it in? So what's your take on this?
Well, I'm a fan of scheduling. I think that if it's not on the calendar, it's likely not going to happen. I also think that we need to reassess how we think about it, because to a certain extent, we might have always been scheduling sex. So a lot of times, couples look back on these like glory days of the beginning of their relationship, where desire felt so spontaneous and they were having sex all the time. But the opportunities to do that often were limited, by not living together, or by busy jobs, or by work travel, or other, commitments. And so it may be actually that we've always had a certain level of scheduling. And what we did with that is we prepared. So, we might have taken a shower, you picked a restaurant to go to, we planned the date, you blow dry your hair and you put on a cute outfit. And so if we, instead of having that sex date sitting on the calendar, and this can work in a lot of different ways. The scheduling can be like a text earlier in the day, hey, what do you think about tonight? It doesn't need to necessarily be like a recurring calendar entry in your calendar. You have to figure out what works for you. But using the anticipation time to prepare in the way that we used to back when we were still dating can be really helpful. And sometimes what that means is simply saying to your partner, listen, I really want to get there with you tonight. But if I put the kids to bed, I'm going to be so exhausted and my nervous system is going to be so shut down. I'm not going to be able to meet you in this place where we've set aside time to be sexual together. And so it may genuinely be figuring out what holds you back from showing up and asking for what you need in order to support yourself getting prepared and getting in the right sort of headspace.
I love that. And I want to repeat what you said there. Just that little gold nugget that I caught was, we have to really reflect on what is holding us back from doing this with our partner. And I think that's a hard question for a lot of moms to answer. I feel like um they don't it's hard to admit that it's, that we're taking on so much, and because that's kind of who we are. That's our responsibility. We're the ones who put the kids to bed. And if we don't put the kids to bed, they're going to cry, because if dad tries to do it and he tries to step in, it's not going to be the same. But at the same time, it's like, if we continue to hold that burden on our shoulders, then nothing's ever going to change. And yeah, there might be a really bad curve when dad starts to help out with the bedtime routine. But I mean, kids are so adaptable. I could see both sides. And I just wanted to throw that out there to the audience who might be thinking like I am in a similar situation. Like immediately, that's what I thought in my head when you're like, I know I'm gonna be tired because I have to put the kids to bed, but then the option is to have dad do it. And then now we have a bigger problem with the kids who, but again, those are still short-term problems to maybe a longer-term solution. I just want to throw that out there for our audience.
Yeah, well, that's a great point, because actually listening to the kids cry for, 45 minutes and dad's struggling and everybody's flailing, that's also not going to put you in the right mood, So, that would be a longer term runway, that might be something that you work on together to try to get to that place. Or it might be that you sort of navigate that and say, okay, with however many kids you have, if you've got 4 kids, bedtime really may be all hands on deck. And if it's not realistic to show up after bedtime because everybody's so exhausted, you're at the point where you just want to collapse and doom scroll on your phone for like half an hour before you pass out, then maybe thinking about, some people have a lot more flexibility with work. Maybe a noontime date is a much better window of time. And so getting creative about trying to figure out how you can protect the time together in a way that makes it so that everybody can show up.
Now, I want to talk about hormone shifts with you real quick. Golly, this happens way too much for women, not just on the monthly. I'm talking about sleep deprivation hormones, where our lower libido because of the sleep deprivation. I'm talking about breastfeeding. I'm talking about people like myself going through menopause. I mean, I feel like we're this hot mess roller coaster over here, and men are much more steady and they don't expect us to change. And we do so much changing over the years when we're with our husbands. What do you suggest for those moms out there who literally can't help it, that this is the low libido might be due to something entirely out of their control?
Yeah, that is such a legitimate question. And so really when you track your cycle, like even if we're just talking about monthly cycles, there are some really big hormone changes. And as you track your cycle, if that's something that you do, you may notice that you have a much higher libido at some points in your cycle than others. It can be really helpful to share that data, like if you're using a tracking app or something like that, to actually share that data with your partner. That can be really helpful actually for partners, so they kind of know what they're walking into, and like, oh, there's certain times of the month where, hormonally we're much more open. And then when we talk about those big hormonal shifts, like around pregnancy, postpartum, breastfeeding, perimenopause, menopause, as women, we are constantly getting on with it, even though we might really just want to lay in bed. Our bodies do change so much on a monthly basis. And then there's these huge changes that we go through. And so I think that it's really important to both recognize when you're having a hormonal impact. And that sometimes actually is often not until afterwards, where you're like, wow, I was really feeling off. And maybe there were some hormones happening. This I think happens a lot around breastfeeding, where people have a really low libido. And it's not until after they finish breastfeeding that they're like, maybe that had something to do with breastfeeding. So if we can start to tune in a little bit more to the nuances of how those hormones impact us, then just literally validating our own experience can be incredibly powerful.
Yeah. I think we have to give ourselves some grace for sure.
100%.
Yeah. And parents, they have this skewed view sometimes, an expectation of what sex should look like, perhaps based on our pre-kid life or maybe media. So how do you help couples redefine what great sex actually is, in the parenting years, which obviously is not like any other part in our life. What does good enough intimacy look like when you're tired and you're stressed and you only have 15 minutes?
Yes. Okay. So two things about this. One, and we could spend like all day on this. So I'm going to try to be concise here. But we have hot sex, which defines itself. It's like that, like rip off your clothes and do it on the kitchen counter, like hot sex, right? This is what we see in movies. It's like have to have you right away. This is rare, more rare in parenthood. Maybe it happens every once in a while for most people. And usually it's away from the house. It's like, okay, we've gone away and we've gotten a hotel room somewhere. But the counterpart to hot sex in a long-term relationship is what we call warm sex. And so this is the, connected. It's usually pretty pleasurable. A lot of times it sort of follows a particular sequence of events. Couples tend to kind of have things that they do together that work pretty well and that are pleasurable for everybody. And so the warm sex is kind of like what keeps the lights on. It keeps it keeps the train going. It's maybe not the most exciting sex, but it's really, really important. So firstly, recognizing both of these are really important and very valuable. One is not better than the other. So that's the first thing. Second, redefining what good sex is requires us to expand what sex is. So as couples get into that, they can really get into a rut with what they do together. Okay, we're going to have sex tonight. It's going to take this long, and these are the things we're going to do. And they don't even have to talk about it because that's just what they do. But if we can expand what sex is, then that expands the situations under which we might feel open to having sex or being sexual. So if being sexual or having sex, if we expand that to kissing, to making out, outside of intercourse, even to talking about sex, what we like, what we miss, what we want more of, what we don't like. If we expand all of that, anything sexual is sex, then that expands the opportunities to come together in a sexual way and have sex. I'm using my finger quotes. Your listeners can't hear me, but that's really important and also builds desire, and excitement.
And one of the things you just said was, to bring up like these new things with your partner and yes, create more excitement. So for a couple that's struggling with the routine and the desire, bringing up a new fantasy or maybe a new kink, it could feel really intimidating. Even though you've been with your partner forever and you trust them completely, it just can feel like an uncomfortable conversation. So how can a partner introduce a new idea to spark that excitement in a way that still feels safe and playful and doesn't risk making that other partner feel inadequate or judged, which is so often what ends up happening when I would say more especially when women are like, "Can we try this?" And then the guy's like, "Well, what haven't doing it right or what's going on? Well, you didn't like it," and we're like, "No, no, no, not that at all." So how do we approach that conversation so we can have this better sex life?
It helps to start with thinking about, so sometimes you might have something very specific that you want to do together. Maybe it's some specific role play that you want to do or some specific act that you want to do together. And then if that's the case, then the instinct is to go in and ask for exactly what you want. But sometimes what happens is that that's sort of out of context. So you get your partner's first reaction, which is sort of like a freeze reaction or like "Ooh, I don't know. I'm not sure about that." And that can really feel so devastating when you've gotten to the point where you're willing to actually ask for this thing that you're thinking about. So it can be helpful to talk about why you want it. So for instance, it really turns me on to think about this, like sharing the fantasy before you ask for to actually do it together and kind of gauge your partner's interest there. I think it could be really hot to do this together. And if they're like, "Oh, really? I don't know, maybe not, for me," then there might be something that you can do together that's a version of that sort of hits the mark without making you feel shut down or rejected. So it's okay to have this be sort of like a series of conversations where you're opening up more and more about your fantasies before you actually ask for the thing that you want.
A series of conversations. I think that's
Yeah.
where we need to really keep that in our head, because so much of, like, if I were to go to my partner and he were to say, "I'm just not into that," I know I would shut down. I'd be like, "Nope, I'm not gonna talk about it anymore." You
Anyone
know?
would.
And so I like that reminder that this is a series of conversations. This can be something that can be brought up over and over.
Yes. And so sometimes you might have a goal in mind. So, for instance, you might want to do something very specific together. And the goal might be, more pleasurable foreplay. So, if the goal is more pleasurable foreplay, then there's all kinds of different ways that you can do that. You can incorporate toys. You can do, mutual masturbation. There's all kinds of different ways that you might be able to get to more pleasurable foreplay. But if you were to come in and say, like, if you have something specific in your mind, so for instance, I would like to use a vibrator during foreplay, right? The goal is to have more pleasurable foreplay. But if you were to say, I want to try this, and your partner's like, I don't want to do that, I'm not comfortable using toys, you're shutting down possibilities that you could come up with something together. So if your partner understands, oh, you want to have more pleasurable foreplay, I want that for you too. Then you're going to be more into it when we get to sort of like the main event, like the sex will be better. Great. Let's figure out how we can do that together. So thinking of it as like a sort of a collaboration can be really helpful.
I know there's so many parents listening to this right now going, "Yes, I needed this today. Oh my goodness." And you're giving them amazing ideas. And there's more that you have. You just wrote your first book. So first of all, congratulations.
Thank
Yay.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
It's called Parents in Love. It's a guide to great sex after kids. Great title. Love that. Tell us about the book, because if we're resonating with you and we want more, what's inside?
So we have touched on very briefly a number of things inside. So there's a lot about desire differences and how to work with that. Really, I really get into the nitty-gritty. Another thing, there's a lot about the nervous system and using nervous system cues to tune into your own experience and work with whatever's coming up for you in a way that makes you more open to connecting with your partner. And there's also a lot about not only sex, but also emotional disconnection that can come up for couples and how that interacts and how it blocks being able to be together sexually.
I was going to ask a question to you. Now I'm just going to ask it anyway, because now you brought it up, because that is one of the things that I know a lot of moms have trouble with, is the mental load of motherhood. I talk about it all the time on this platform for people who listen to me often. That mental load of motherhood, it has so many side effects, and a lot of them aren't good. And having low libido is huge, and one of them. And I know it affects so much of our relationship. So I'm really excited to hear that you're going to dive into that. Is there any like little tidbits that you could give us right now of, if we're listing like one piece of advice that we can do? And then of course we'll go to the book and read more.
Well, we need to be real that this is a real thing. And for most research shows that for most people, desire is lessened by stress. So if you have more stress in your life, you have less desire. There's a few people who this is the opposite. I don't know any of them personally, and none of them that I know are moms. And so when you have more stress, when you're carrying more mental load, your nervous system is overwhelmed. That's just simply what it is. It's overwhelmed. You're either in a fight or flight sympathetic nervous system state, or you're in a shutdown state where you are like really exhausted, you're doom scrolling, you're like really not wired for connection at all. But our nervous systems are wired for connection, and they're wired to re-regulate. So in order to do that, we have to give them the opportunity. So really, one of the things that I say the most, if you're a mom and you're struggling with low desire, self-care, like actually self-care. So if you don't know what you want outside the bedroom and you can't follow your own desire, outside the bedroom. Like moms that I talk to, they're fantasizing about a weekend alone in a hotel room. Genuinely, this is their fantasy. They're not
Oh,
like,
yes, it
what?
is.
Yeah, it is. It is. I get it. I get it. Yeah, they're not like, oh, what fun, sexy thing could I do with my partner? No, no. They're like, leave me alone. Maybe if weekend is not even enough. So that self-care outside the bedroom leads to more desire in the bedroom.
Yeah, yeah, it does. I guess we know that as mothers, it's so hard to do self-care, and that's a whole other topic. But yes, we need to make ourselves a priority, and we have to do that. So thank you for that advice. Now your book, where can we find it?
It's coming out in the end of October, so October 21st, just a couple of weeks. And you can find it anywhere books are sold, Amazon, Barnes& and Noble. You can get it through my publisher. You can find it on my website, which is my name, RebeccaUdy.com.
And obviously, this is primarily for parents with the title. But what kind of parent would be an ideal person to read this?
Anyone in a long-term relationship actually could benefit from this book. It is about parents, and one of the things that I do inside the book as well is go through ages and stages. And so this covers early parenthood all the way through, well, really actually like preconception. So fertility all the way through empty nest. So this covers the lifespan of a parent. But even if you're not a parent, the long-term, if you're struggling with a desire difference in a long-term relationship, then this book is definitely for you.
And what if we want more than just a book? What else do you do? Do you offer any services? Can we reach out to you for more? Do you do anything that's virtual?
Yes, I do. So my main thing actually is a clinical practice. So I'm licensed in the state of Massachusetts as a therapist. And so I'm a couples therapist. I have a full clinical practice. I see people all the time, but I also do coaching with folks as well. And actually Desire Difference is a really great, coaching is really well suited for a desire difference. So if people want to work with me, if they want to, sort of the book or the listening to the podcast feels like it's not enough, absolutely reach out to me. We can talk.
I love that. So, once again, parents, you need to go and check this out. Parents in Love, a guide to great sex after kids. And even better, we got a sneak peek for you because if you download the Impactful Parent app, which is free on your phone's app store, so there's no reason not to download it, completely free, you're going to find right next to this episode underneath the podcasting area, then we're going to have a little snippet of the book. This is an amazing resource for so many parents. So thank you so much for getting us that. I want to end our conversation with a good question for you about right now. What can we do? If a parent's listening and they're feeling completely disconnected from their partner, maybe they haven't had sex in months, maybe they want to reconnect, they just don't know where to start. What's the very first thing or a very low barrier to entry action item that you would suggest that we can do today to begin bridging that gap and reconnecting with our partner again?
Such a great question. So I would love it if people would tune in to the micro moments that we have all the time. So this is asking your child or children to wait while you finish a conversation with your partner. This is smiling at them across like a chaotic kitchen in a way that says like, hey, I see you. We're in this together. It's maybe a 3-second kiss or a real hug where you squeeze each other and take a deep breath. So these are the micro moments that are really accessible day to day, and they can make a huge difference in connection.
I'm glad you decided to be here today. Begin your Impactful Parent journey by downloading the Impactful Parent app. The Impactful Parent app is free so that you can carry help, tips, and parenting resources right in your pocket. Discover answers to your parenting questions. Download the app today. It's free. Go to your phone's app store and discover how you can step up your parenting game and become a more impactful parent. Also, remember that this episode is just a small part of what the Impactful Parent offers. Also available are online courses, parent support groups, coaching services, and of course, the app. So find out more by going to theimpactfulparent.com. But until next time, you got this, parents. I'm just here to help.